So hi there, my name is Krista Lindstrom and I am a divorce mortgage specialist. I'm here today to talk to you about the Spousal Buyout program. So everybody likes a good story. So let's start with the story of Mike and Molly. Mike and Molly are a married couple who are going through divorce. They own a home together that's worth approximately $300,000 and Molly wants to stay living in the home. They have a joint mortgage together for approximately $250,000, and they also have joint credit card debt of about $10,000. And they want to pay out this debt with this particular transaction. So there's about $40,000 of equity left inside of the home. And they would like to divide that equity equally in between the two of them. So therefore, $20,000 in equity is going to go towards Mike in the form of a payout, and $20,000 equity is going to stay inside of the home for Molly. So therefore, Molly needs to get a new mortgage for approximately $280,000. Why this spousal buyout program is so much different than a traditional refinance is if you were to do this transaction at a traditional bank, you would only be allowed to access 80% of the equity inside of the home. In this particular situation, Mike and Molly need to access 93% of the equity. So under a traditional refinance, this program or this mortgage would have been declined. So what is a spousal buyout? Mike and Molly clearly need a spousal buyout, but what is it? So essentially a spousal buyout is a mortgage for divorcing couples. So if I were to define a spousal buyout for you, it would be in situations of a relationship breakdown where one party will keep the existing property as a primary residence. So who's eligible for this program? So anybody who's married is eligible for the program, anybody who's common law is eligible for the program, or anybody who's in a jointly titled relationship. So let's say that two siblings bought a home together and the relationship broke down, they would be eligible for the spousal buyout program as well. This program allows for the division of matrimonial property, it allows for the division of matrimonial debt, and a lump sum payout, very similar to the situation that I was just talking about in my story with Mike and Molly. Mike's getting $20,000 as part of the equity. So what does the spousal buyout program solve? So essentially, the spousal buyout program solves where one spouse wants to stay in the home opposed to having to sell it. This is great in situations where there's children involved. So if there's kids who really like the neighborhood that they live in, or if there's kids that go to school nearby, it's great that one spouse can stay in the property to keep that commonality for the kids. It also solves situations of minimal equity. So we know here in Alberta that we have had very little increases to property value in the last 10 years. So when people are in situations of minimal equity, they can't qualify for the traditional refinance. So the spousal buyout is perfect for situations of minimal equity. It also allows for the equity payout to the spouse, which is great, and it dissolves matrimonial debt. So there are four major components to the spousal buyout program. The first one is title. Both spouses need to currently be on title. So there's an exception to that we'll talk about later, but for now, both spouses need to be on title. We have to do an appraisal of the property because we need to confirm the value of the home. We need to do a signed offer to purchase and a signed separation agreement. So let's talk about that title that we just spoke about. Both spouses need to be on title if the relationship is a common law relationship. If the relationship isn't common law, then both spouses don't need to be on title. Just one spouse can be on title. The spouse that is staying in the home must use the home as a principal residence. And in this situation of Mike and Molly, we will be removing Mike off of the title of the home and keeping Molly on as the primary homeowner. Appraisal. So one of the requirements was appraisal. The appraisal needs to be ordered by your mortgage broker to determine the market value of the home. This has to be done by a certified home appraiser, not from a realtor. The appraisal must not be older than approximately 60 days at the time of funding. Offer to purchase. So why we need an offer to purchase for a spousal buyout is this transaction is actually done as a purchase instead of a refinance. So in Mike and Molly's case, Mike and Molly are both going to be the seller of the home and Molly is going to be the purchaser of the home. And the value of the home is going to be the appraised value. We also require a separation agreement, or you can also, some people call it minutes of settlement. This is often worked on with your legal counsel or your lawyer. So this separation is going to address the terms of your divorce. Who's keeping the home? Who's responsible for the spousal debt? Who's paying and receiving child or spousal support? And who's receiving equity? Now, I'm the type of person who likes to share both the pros and the cons of this type of transaction. There's some expense to this particular program. Now, this expense isn't even close to what you would pay in real estate fees to sell the home, but it is something that I think that we need to address. So there is an appraisal cost. Generally, appraisal costs range from $250 to $500 depending on the size and the location of the home. There is a legal cost because we do have to change title around. This is an insured program through CMHC. So there is an insurance premium that's added onto this particular mortgage. And you need to determine whether or not there is a penalty from your existing lender. And if your existing lender is charging a penalty, we're going to need to include that in the transaction. And we would need to determine if there's a penalty from the existing lender. The best part about this program, which I might want to call a non-expense, is the services of your mortgage broker. In most circumstances, a mortgage broker doesn't charge for their time. I don't charge for my time when we're using an A lender to do this transaction. So it's really nice to have the expertise of a divorce mortgage specialist without having any cost associated to it. So what's the process? Where do we go from here? What do we do next? So the first thing that you need to do is contact me for a pre-approval. Once the pre-approval is complete, both the client, the mortgage broker, and the legal counsel will work together to communicate through the process and come to terms. Next step is all the documents get signed, and the final step is refer it to a real estate lawyer for the finalization. So I'd like to share some tips and tricks to this particular type of spousal buyout program. So if you are the pair of support, sometimes spousal support and child support can be quite limiting when you're trying to qualify for the mortgage. So we have a way to, if you are the pair of support, we can actually reduce your income instead of treating the spousal and child support as a liability. So that is a very big difference in qualifying. It often means an approval instead of a decline. In situations, if there is little or no income, but there's a lot of equity inside of the home, we can actually do an equity mortgage instead of an income-based mortgage, which is very helpful for people who have limited income. If you are the receiver of spousal support or child tax credit, we can use that income to qualify for the mortgage, which is very, very helpful if you're only working part-time. So the last two tricks that I wanted to share with you is with this particular program, we can access 95% of the equity instead of the traditional 80% of the equity. So if you're a self-employed individual who doesn't claim very much money with Canada Revenue, we do have a stated income mortgage that allows us to state income opposed to using income that's claimed with Canada Revenue. So if you happen to be legal counsel who's watching this particular video, some of the things that you may want to consider for your client when it comes to negotiation purposes is this is a CMHC insured product. So the question begs, should both applicants be splitting the CMHC premium? Something to consider. The other one is penalty. If there's a penalty associated to the mortgage, should one spouse be paying the penalty or should they be splitting the penalty? And finally, if we are paying a lump sum of spousal support, there's some tax implications associated to that. So that may want to be considered for your clients as well. So in closing, the spousal buyout program is a cost-effective alternative to selling. It allows one spouse to stay in the matrimonial property, which is often way cheaper than renting. So that leads me to, who do you know who's in the midst of a separation and divorce and needs some great mortgage advice?